Here we are. We're live. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Hope you're having an amazing day so far, filled with positive things. And if not, it's okay because we're going to talk about some positives today that will give you something fantastic to think about the rest of the day. Because, as we always say in conservation, it's easy to point out what's wrong, but it's always a challenge to hear about what's going right. And that is important because we are the filter between what's working and what's not working. So we need to continue to look at what's not working in order to become the filters to process the future into what can work. So today is going to be amazing. We've talked about coffee before. We've talked about wearing coffee and trying not to wear coffee, but wearing coffee. But what if coffee is another solution to another problem? And that problem is the problem of a concrete world. Now, there's a pretty cool thing going on here right now. Instead of this coffee going to a landfill, whatever can't be used for clothing can actually be made into a concrete mix that creates concrete that is 30% stronger. Now, concrete is a fascinating topic and one that we need to talk about just a little bit about what's happening with concrete to understand why this innovation could change the future in such a drastic way. First, let's go back for a second. Let's talk about the difference between cement and concrete. Now, cement is an ingredient of concrete. It is not concrete itself. Now, concrete has a mix of different things that they add in. And so concrete is a mix of different types of agents that go in there. Now, part of it is sand, and sometimes part of it is coal ash, which is cancer-causing chemical. So let's just think about concrete. There we go. Now, so the typical concrete mix about 10% cement, 20% air, and water. And by the way, that water needs to be so clean that water needs to be drinkable. It can't just be potable. 30% sand. We're going to get into sand here in a minute. And 40% gravel. That is your standard kind of concrete mix. Okay, so you put all those together, you have concrete. Now the problem is this cement is often coal ash. We'll get into that. And the other problem with this mix that we're looking at right now is the 30% sand. And why is that a big problem? Well, sand is one of the planet's most mined materials. Over 50 billion tons of it are extracted from lakes, riverbeds, and coastlines every year just to provide cement and glass, right? We make both. So if you think about your average city, think about your concrete, think about your glass, and think about all the sand that needs to come from the natural resources. Does it come from the desert? No. And we'll talk about that for a quick second. Sand mining is one of the most destructive, under-spoken about environmental disasters. It's happening right now. And actually, Sierra and I are going to go more in depth in that in our upcoming series called Ecotourism, where we went down and actually found some illegal sand mines in Colombia. And we're going to talk about how that affects the world. So sand is being pulled from where it needs to be added to this concrete mixture to allow us to pave over our own nature. And, as you can imagine, that's probably not going to be ultimately a sustainable thing. So here we go. Let's just talk real fast about sand. So here we have, for example, Duke Energy. Duke Energy, many of you are probably familiar with them if you're involved in environmental movements, as they are very destructive nationwide. But they actually use coal ash. They're very proud of it. They use it for stronger concrete. So what's up with coal ash? Now, coal ash is known to be cancer-causing. This town in Indiana was actually built around a lot of the coal ash areas. And coal ash, the toxins in coal ash can cause cancer, heart disease, reproductive failure, stroke, and inflict lasting brain damage on children. Now, this is being sent out in these giant smokestacks everywhere coal ash is being done. And now you have this toxic leftover coal ash that's being placed in cement. And that cement is also being used underwater. It's being used to build underwater housing. It's being used in underwater reefs. It's being used in docks. Now, whenever that chips, what happens is the coal ash will now be exposed. It's not encapsulated anymore. They're trying to sell it that they're putting coal ash, which is so toxic that they already admit it's cancer causing. They're saying that they're putting it in there to seal it, like it's the end of a movie where they're going to seal it up forever and throw it to the bottom of the ocean so no one can reverse the spell. It's ridiculous, because the moment that piece of concrete breaks, that coal ash is spilling into your environment. So we are being poisoned by our own surroundings and our own inventions that are happening to us. Now, this is a really interesting map I wanted to share with everybody. This is a map of the coal ash producers. Now, the green shows where, and this is all self-reported, by the way. This is self-reported. The green shows where they're using liners to prevent coal ash from entering the environment. So everyone that lives in these communities that doesn't have a green dot, now this is according to the coal ash industry, that is seeping into their local environments. And we've been working with a lot of people that have been affected by coal ash that are trying to change it. Recently, Aaron Brockovich came out with a story on it. There is the North Carolina is a massive spot, and we have friends that are working on that as well. And there's even other issues where friends of ours, Trevor and Aaron Brockovich, is working with a friend of ours right now to help talk about these cancer clusters that are being created by coal ash. So coal ash is becoming a big topic. Now, coal ash is a big problem. They are adding that to cement to make it stronger. Instead, we could be using coffee. We'll get back into coffee in a second. First of all, the other big issue that we have with concrete is the sand. 30% of it is sand. That is a lot. When you look at a city, 30% of that is sand, and it is not sand from a desert. There are multiple types of sand that can be used. Now, here's a really interesting one. Sand is the planet's most mined material. It's from 50 billion tons extracted. But this is the important part. It's from lakes, riverbeds, and coastlines and deltas. Now, if you look at that, so according to UN, the global daily demand for sand is around 18 kilograms per person on average. Over a year, the demand is equivalent to around 6,570 kilograms per person. That is a lot of sand that's coming out of our natural resources. And we can see in maps like this where coastlines are changing all around the world because we are pulling out our natural resource to sell it. Now, why is it that we're doing this? Well, desert sand, as you see, is actually the wrong kind of sand. It's not going to do any help inside of a concrete mix. So the sand they want is what's called sharp sand, which comes from rivers, beaches, and that gives it a more cohesive feel for a stronger mix. And that is why we are not opening up mines in the middle of the desert. The desert's sitting there fine. So just so everybody knows, this is the difference here when we talk about silt, sand, and pebbles. I thought this was pretty fascinating. So, this is the nature in all of its aspects, and we're pulling out that middle one. And that is a very, very dangerous thing. Now, coffee is the key because coffee can be used to replace the sand element and create the stronger lasting bits. So what they want to do is replace sand with coffee. Now, this works out perfect because there is so much coffee being drank in America. I was reading, they were saying 30 to 40% of the world's population drinks coffee regularly. It came out to 166.63 million 60-kilogram bags of coffee were consumed globally, 2020 and 2021. That is a lot of coffee. Now, what happens afterwards? If you're not composting it and it's not going into clothing like we talked about before, it's going into your landfill. And the biodegradable aspects of coffee grounds are unable to be performed inside of landfills. So even though it's organic and even though it is compostable, when it is in a landfill, the way that it is dealt with and the chemicals that are around it and the things around it prevent it from breaking down. So that this is, it's not what you think. The coffee is not breaking down in the landfill and going back into the dirt. It is sitting there and becoming another problem. So why not use this as another way? Why not use this coffee leftover in its positive ways? We can compost it. We can make clothing out of it. We can even strengthen our concrete and stop destroying our environment while we're stealing sand from where it's supposed to be on riverbeds and lakes. And instead, we can be using it to do something helpful. So, amazing innovation. What can't coffee do? Yes, and definitely I see Sierra's on here. Morning. Concrete, unfortunately, absolutely everywhere. I was just down in Mexico, and all the buildings are made out of concrete because it's so hot down there. So, here in the States, right, we have wood. We have a few other options, but there are places, especially in very high sun energy hot places, where we're going to have this issue, and everybody is going to be making it out of concrete. So we have paved over nature, and unfortunately, while we've done that, we have added elements that bring us cancer. The whole thing, in my estimation, has been a big swing and a miss, because we thought this could bring us to the next level. In certain ways it has, certain ways it works. Paved roads make business efficient. But now we're finding out that if you're in Florida, they're going to be paved with phosphogypsum dust, which means there's more cancer causing. So why should we be getting cancer from our water, our concrete, our roads, our doors, our buildings, our windows? Why is coal ash, sand in these buildings? Why aren't we finding ways to less toxify ourselves? And people are. So here we go. So enjoy your cup of coffee. Remember, when you're throwing your grounds out, that they could be used to potentially save the world. All right, everybody.